Alright, welcome to Module 4 Video 3. In this video we're going to talk about PowerPoints. So we don't see PowerPoints super often. Usually professors prefer to upload their documents as slides, but PowerPoints are usually fun to edit when we get them. So here's how we go about that. Also, if you're using a MacBook, I usually like to close things out, but Windows too if you don't have a whole lot of processing power. So those are just my suggestions. It makes things run smoother when you've only got one or two programs running. So now we've got our accessibility checker open, just like our Word docs, and it'll tell us some quick things that we should fix. So we've got this hard to read text contrast here that it's pointed out for us. So we can just select this this white text on this yellow background, and we can make it black, and it should be good. I don't know why it says the font color is red. There we go. Make it black. That should fix that. Now we can just sort of navigate through our errors. So the first thing we see next is the missing alt text error. Sometimes they like to AI generate things. I usually don't like the AI generated descriptions. They're not very good yet. They probably will be good. Usually you can click view alt text, and you can mark that as decorative if it's like a background or something that doesn't really have any useful information. So this one is particularly unuseful alt text, a math formula with a square and a line. There's a lot more than a square and a line there. So we'll take that out, and then we'll work on getting some real alt text here. Actually, for this case, both of these equations were the same for some reason, and it didn't seem like they were repeated on purpose. So we'll just pull that one up, and then we can type this as an equation, which means that we won't even have to use alt text for this particular equation, which the equation tools in PowerPoints are actually really good. So this is preferable. If you see an equation that's an image and you can type it in PowerPoint, you should. We'll see a case in the PDF editor where this isn't the case, but for PowerPoints, if you can type the equation, definitely go for it. And we'll talk more about the alt text that you'd use for math equations in the PDF video. So sometimes it takes a little while to find all the equation pieces you need, so I'll speed this part up, but we'll just type this out, and then you'll have an equation, and then we can actually delete the equation picture. Great, so we've gotten our equation finished. Now we can go on to the next alt text error, which is going to be this graph here, showing associate's degrees awarded in liberal arts correlates with Google searches for tummy ache. So the main thing to do with alt text of graphs is you want to be descriptive, and you want to provide the information in as concise a format as you can without leaving things out. So for this particular alt text, I put graph depicting a spurious correlation between associate's degrees awarded in liberal arts and Google searches for tummy aches. And you will also probably want to put from a period of 2011 to 2021, and then perhaps any other relevant details, perhaps that it's showing an upward trend. You just want to make sure that you're including details that are relevant to the slide, to as best of an ability as you can. And be sure to click save. Once you've saved it, you can head on to the next one. So here's a page with some doodles. Sometimes professors like to draw, they like to highlight things. Sometimes these highlights are made as images. If they don't seem super emphatic, you can make them decorative, but if they seem important, you can say emphasis placed on and insert the quote that is important for. So in this case, emphasis on drawings can be a little bit difficult to handle on PowerPoints. But a lot of the time for highlights, you can just do away with them and mark them as decorative. You don't have to delete them, but you should mark them as decorative. So then, for the case of all of these doodles here, the arrow seems important, so we can say arrow pointing to the paragraph from the title. And then some of the little extras you can mark them as decorative. You can say, oh, this is a smiley face. If it didn't seem like important to the slide, you can say mark as decorative. This is like the other half of the arrow. You can mark that as decorative. You say, oh, here's a tree, drawing of a tree. You say maybe red pen, drawing of a pine tree, line drawing of a pine tree, something like that. Something that's descriptive but not overly long. And then here's this tree. In the case that this label was drawn in and it's something important, say like it's pointing to the trunk of the tree, you can say like label for the trunk of the tree or something like that, but we just marked it decorative. So now we've got a picture of a poem. So this, it can be a little bit interesting to handle. So for most pictures of documents, well, you hopefully won't see that many of them, but there's two things that you can do. One is make the alt text the document, or the content of the document. So in this case, it's a short poem, so we'll just go ahead and make the alt text as the poem. But say it's a really long document, like probably really anything longer than this, I would copy down the text that's in the document and then place it in a new slide below, and then mark this image as, and make the alt text of this image saying something like content, or photo of document, content, and next slide. Something like that, just to indicate that the content is available and it'll be in the next slide, if it's a longer document. That's just what I would suggest. But in this case, since it's short, we can just put the content of the poem into the alt text. But it'd be good to say something like, poem by John Donne, insert this poem quote. Alright, so now we've got an Excel chart that I've generated showing the number of cookies produced in a home bakery over a series of 23 days. So we can say graph depicting number of cookies produced in a home bakery, say over a period of 23 days, and then maybe you can point out relevant data points. So at day 7, there were 17 cookies produced, and at day 20, there were 10 cookies produced. I can't count. So, you can say, these many cookies were produced on these days, these were the peaks. You could even put the valleys. You can say, oh, I see on day 16 that there were no cookies produced. So, just sort of putting the relevant data in. You don't have to do too much, like you don't necessarily have to say that the line is yellow, but just saying, okay, here's the chart, here's what it's saying, here's the relevant data. Always remember to save it, and then we can go to the next error, because I think we've gotten all the alternative text errors. So now we've got this merged and split cell error again. We fix it pretty much the same way as we fix the document error. It's a little bit harder to see this time because of the table line contrast. So we say split cells, number of columns 2, number of rows 1, have to reinsert the data as it needs to be in the table. And that should fix that. Now we've got some missing slide titles. So it can usually identify like what the title is supposed to be. So we can say set as slide title. So if it doesn't identify it exactly, then you can select the content that is the title, and then you can say set as slide title with this quick fix thing, which is really helpful. So after we set the slide titles, now we can verify the reading order. So one of the ways to do this is with the selection pane. So we can see in which order is it reading things first. The way to find this is to go to arrange, and then you can say selection pane, and that'll bring the selection pane up. Another thing that you can do is to view the order, which is in reorder objects. So it's important to note the numbers in the bottom left corner, because I think Windows and Mac does it differently. So depending on which you're using, make sure that the order is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whether it's front to back or back to front. But the selection pane should be the same from top to bottom. So that way you can make sure that all of your things are in order. Of course your title should be read first, and then your image and source should be read sequentially. And then if there isn't a clear order, just do your best to keep it, left to right, top to bottom, across the screen, or whatever the visual flow may be if it's different. So then we've got our reading order here with this series of sketches. So we might want to adjust that. We can also add in that label if we need to. So in this case, it looks like we do. So we'll say, here's tree, here's this label. We'll pop that in there. Make sure our smiley face and everything is in order. We'll find our text box and put it near the top because that's some actually relevant information. We'll put our title at the top. We'll close our groups for better viewing because that might make it a little bit easier to see. We'll just insert all of our data points in as we need them to be. Not our data points, but our text and image reading in a way that makes sense. And so here we can view it this way again, and we can order our title first, then our text, then our image. And I personally like the selection pane way of doing it, but the reorder objects way is kind of a fun way to visualize it too. So feel free to play around. Either way works. And it's just, if you go to the arrange menu, then you can fix it. So now we'll go to our hidden messages, which really should be a color contrast issue. I don't really know why PowerPoint didn't see it. You probably won't see that many hidden messages, but I just threw in one for fun. So we've got that "you got this" thing. Now we can go through with our selection pane and see that everything is in the right order. We can verify the reading order once we've checked it all. So we can check the reading order, and then also I just wanted to show you where you can find the slide titles again. It's in the outline view, which you'll go to view, then click outline view, and then you can make sure that the titles are the way that they're supposed to be. So that's always good to double check too. You can also adjust some colors if you need to with the theme colors just to make sure everything is accessible. And yeah, that's all of PowerPoints. And if you have any concerns or questions, always feel free to reach out.